Good morning and welcome to this week's IGTV. Today I'm talking about how do you model healthy conflict in front of your kids as opposed to maybe like the yelling and screaming or name calling and making it super traumatizing for kids so they grow up avoiding conflict their whole lives and never actually have hard conversations with their partners because they go back to conflict is dangerous, we shouldn't do this, which may or may not be how you arrived at this exact point of conflict. Yes? Does this sound like you? Okay, well, you are welcome at this conflict party. We are going to talk all about conflict today and how to have conflict in front of your kids. Because not having conflict in front of your kids is equally damaging. I'm going to say that one more time. Not having conflict in front of your children is equally damaging than having the unhealthy, perhaps toxic or even dangerous conflict. Because both of those teach your children to run from conflict with their hair on fire and never have hard conversations in relationships that are required for resolution and healing and growth and developing emotional intimacy and real connection. Okay, let's talk about that. My name is Allie Payne. I am a certified life coach, certified relationship systems coach, and I have been working with parents of teens for the last 16 years to help them end the baffling blow-ups, painful disconnection, and stressful silences, to create relationships based on mutual trust and respect and day-to-day meaningful connection. Like conversations where there's conflict. Okay, let's talk about this. I don't have notes and today's going to be kind of off the cuff. So here we go. Having a bit of my matcha latte. If you're here on Instagram, I would love a follow. If you're here on YouTube, I would love a subscribe. Okay, so here's how I did it with my kid's dad for years, okay? We would have arguments in front of the kids because it's healthy and it's normal to not agree. So again, as I just said, if this feels like something that is so scary for you, then I want you to ask for help. I want you to seek therapy. I want you to seek healing, because if what I'm starting with as step one already feels like too much, God love you and bless you. I see you. It is okay. We gotta start doing this. Okay. So let's frame conflict, shall we? Conflict is not death. No, actually it's not. Conflict is not death. Conflict is not a tool to make sure you are right so other people know that they are wrong. That's a shocker, right? Conflict is not what happens when someone disagrees with you and therefore you must hate them or fear them. No, that's not conflict either. Okay? Conflict is not a tool to be used on or against someone. Conflict is actually the beginning of change. Conflict is the beginning of change, right? So think of like any great movie in your life. Think of any great movie. There is no great movie that did not have conflict. And it's not just like to get people to pay to come see it. It's because in order for a change to occur, not necessarily change that we tie up in a fancy bow and everything turns out like unicorns and rainbows, but conflict is required for change. Okay? So if you are avoiding conflict because you were raised that conflict is dangerous, bad, or conflict is avoided because it's scary and it's like this black mystery box where people could die, which is very true for a lot of people, then you probably are struggling with change. You might also be struggling with intimacy in your relationship. You might be struggling with real depth of connection in relationship if there isn't conflict. Healthy relationships have conflict. Period. Healthy relationships have conflict. Okay? So here's what my kid's dad and I did in front of them, because we chose to have conflict in front of them. Now, we would not use our hands, Okay, so I'm just going to put some basic ground rules. If this is not what you grew up, there's no hitting. There's no hitting, there's no slamming, there's no throwing. No, no, no. No, no. Okay? What we chose to do is use I language. Something would happen. Some stimulus, something happened, okay? And we would say, I'm feeling a bit defensive about that statement, or I feel a bit attacked by that statement. That's not what I perceived happened. I saw this X, Y, and Z, or I asked for this and this and this. Now, there is an agreement in a relationship that you come to a conflict willing to resolve it. Did you know that's actually necessary? Like even a mediator, when they're mediating agreements, the first thing they will say is, are you willing to resolve this? That's the first question. Because if you're not willing to resolve it, you're back on the other things I said where you want to be right. You want to make sure they're wrong. You're coming at it from fear. You need power and control. And you're afraid that this is going to remove some power and control. You're afraid of vulnerability. You want to, you don't understand the other person. And so you need to shut them down or whatever it is. Okay. If you don't come to conflict with a willingness to resolve it, then you're back like pre-step A maybe. Okay. So we would say to each other, I'm feeling attacked by that comment, or I feel hurt by that comment. I statements, not you. That's step number 1. If you're modeling this for your kids, you've got to use I statements, ownership, not projection. Okay? Projection escalates conflict. Ownership de-escalates, calms conflict. Now that doesn't mean I'm not feeling conflict in my chest and being like, I want to yell at you. Of course, I'm human. Are you kidding? I want to yell at you. I want to poke your eyes out. I want to rip your hair. Of course I do. I'm human. Inside, really, I'm a 2-year-old. Okay? Yeah, I am. And I'm also really emotional. Whereas my kid's dad is like way more like cool and analytical. And so that was a struggle for me. I had to breathe. When I could feel it building, like in my chest. Type yes in the comments if that sounds familiar. Like when you can feel conflict, you get triggered. There's something that's like, not that, or did you really just, I had to learn to take a breath so that I could remain calm, because remember, I'm in front of the kids and I want them to see healthy conflict. Okay. So I had to take a breath in order to kind of keep my nervous system from getting like super hijacked. Okay. I had to remember to breathe. And that this person, their dad, was like not out to get me. Okay. Even when I'm upset in that moment and my brain wants to say, you need to take him out. He's not out to get me. He might have pissed me off. Sure. He might have pissed me off, but that doesn't mean like I am not at risk. I am safe. My world is not being threatened. I just am pissed off. It's something he did or said. So I would say using ownership language. Oh my gosh, I love that I'm not alone. Thank you for posting that in the comments. I am feeling hurt. So name the feeling, name it to tame it, right? This was an agreement that we had very early on. We wanted to raise our children around healthy conflict. I grew up in a conflict avoidant home where, because conflict was avoided, it was also explosive. Because anytime you try and hold the lid on a boiling pot, eventually the pressure is going to build and somebody's going to get burned. So I grew up in a conflict avoidant home where we didn't talk about things that were necessary, or at least that wasn't modeled for me. And then the pot would blow and it would get yelling, screaming, and physically violent. Not against each other, but against me. And so I grew up that way, and I did not want to do that for my kids. I also grew up in a home where a lot of these hard conversations and conflict would happen after the kids went to bed, when the parents thought the kids were sleeping, but weren't sleeping and actually heard all of it. So also toxic, not healthy. Not that it's not okay to have these conversations, and the kids overhear, but even the methodology of those conversations that were overheard were not really healthy, okay? And my kid's dad grew up in a home where there was more like silent treatment and more kind of toxicity per se, but also kind of conflict avoidance. So we had this agreement. His parents divorced. We had this agreement that we wanted to, we were both very different at it. We're different people. We weren't masters at it, but we were committed to showing our kids we could have hard conversations. Okay? That was just a commitment that we had because we wanted them to know they were safe, even though they were uncomfortable, that mom and dad are not going to agree on everything. Like, what kind of fairy tale is that? Okay, it's obviously a Disney movie that I'm not a star in. I don't know why. But mom and dad are not going to agree on everything. Co-parents are not going to agree on everything, and that's okay. So it was just a basic agreement. I know that doesn't really answer your question, but we just had that agreement that was going to happen in our household because we wanted our kids to come to us with hard stuff. And we said, you don't have to agree with me. You don't have to agree with us. You want to be mad at me? Great, be mad at me. I mean, I have some rules about how that's going to look. I don't call you names. You're not going to call me names. I don't hit you with these hands. You're not going to hit me. I don't throw things at you. You're not going to throw things at me. But you want to be mad at me and you want to be like, I am so mad at you. I feel so hurt. Great. Bring it. Bring it. I love you and your feelings matter to me and I want to hear your pain and your struggle and your anger. I am not just here for your shiny, sparkly, fancy feelings that make me feel good. I'm here for all of it, so bring it. So we had to model this. We chose to model this for our kids. So using I language that was step one. Using I language was step one. The next thing was just being like open to the fact that like, okay, I feel hurt by that. And then, or I feel frustrated when I see you do that. Or I feel, remember lots of I, not a lot of you. And then like, their dad would say something, like, oh, okay, I don't understand. Can you explain it to me? Because we're all in our own world. We all do our own stuff. We all have our own weirdisms that we do that we don't realize irritate other people. Even when you've lived together for 20 years, we still piss each other off. It's normal. So what we were modeling, was I language. That's step number one is I language. I feel this about this. I feel frustrated. I feel angry. I feel whatever. The person that you're speaking to gets curious. Not defensive. Curious. So the other person would say, oh, okay, what did you hear me say? Or what specifically, I don't get it. Get curious. Okay. Then it's up to the person who's having the issue to, as best as possible, say, okay, well, I just heard you. Now, this was probably more complex for their dad and I because we're adults than they would have. But we would say like, well, like I thought I had already said, I didn't like that. Or I thought I already said when I heard those words that I feel hurt. So I'd like you to choose different words. Or I thought I asked you to put XYZ away in the cupboard or whatever. And they'll be like, oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot. Or, oh, I must have misunderstood. Or, oh, okay. Thanks for letting me know. It's just that, like it just needed to just be simple and not take it so personally. Now, did it get heated sometimes? Yes, it did. We did raise our voices. We did not yell, but we did raise our voices. Did we always agree? No. Did it always get wrapped up in a bow? No. Sometimes we could feel it escalating and we needed to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to take a break. So we were modeling regulation. We would leave the space and go, okay, I'm not feeling heard. I'm going to walk away for 5 minutes. This is important to me. I will come back. I just need a minute. So we would model regulation. Leave the situation. Go for a walk. Go take a breath. model walking away in a healthy way because we were agreeing to come back. Now, sometimes our kids saw us come back and resolve this, which I'm going to tell you about. Sometimes they didn't because we realized this was a bigger issue and we needed to do this away from the kids. So that's a moment of decision between the two of you. Okay. So when we would come back in front of the kids, we would say, okay, I just needed to calm down a bit. I noticed I was getting defensive. So this is all about ownership. I noticed I was getting triggered. So what that person who walked away was doing was modeling regulation, but also modeling inner curiosity, inside curiosity. What is it about me that is so bothered right now? What is it about me and my experience of life and the way I see the world that is so upset right now? Ownership. I'm still at ownership. Have you noticed that? I haven't once gone to projection, right? Wow, it's powerful when we model ownership for our kids. Okay? So the person who was escalated would come back and usually say, okay, I realized what was going on for me was I felt, and I would often say this, not that their dad didn't say this, but I'm just more emotionally expressive. And so I would say, I realized what was up for me was I was feeling unheard, and I know that that's a big button for me. And so it wasn't entirely about what just went on between us. Some of it was from my past, and that's a big trigger for me. What I would like to hear, so now I'm making a request. Notice that? Now I'm making a request. What I needed to hear or what I'd like is this. Now, the other person can say, okay, easy peasy. Or, oh, okay, sorry, I didn't, sure. Or they can say, no, that actually doesn't work for me. And then they can make a counter offer. Okay. They can be like, okay, I'm not going to promise you something I'm not going to do. So what about this instead? So now we're in a bit of a negotiation. That's conflict. You see, conflict is something happens for someone. It's the beginning of change. Now, why is it the beginning of the change? Because this is how our relationship stayed on track at the time. This is how our relationship avoided the big blow-ups, that we acknowledged we are different people. We come from different places. We have different values. We have different beliefs, and we're not always going to agree. And that negotiation is a key tool for being in a healthy relationship. Instead of needing to be right and someone having to be wrong, or instead of needing to win so that someone else loses. No. And I'm going to tell you how this wore off on our kids. Our kids did come to us when they were angry. And they would say, well, I don't agree with that. That was generally how they would start. And they'd be pissed. And they'd be like, I don't agree with that. And we would be like, great. Tell us what you don't agree with. Help us to understand. Remember, they would take ownership over their expression, and the receiver gets curious first. Not personal. Get curious. Okay, what don't you agree with? Doesn't mean I'm changing my mind. But okay, tell me what you don't agree with. And they're like, I don't agree with this, whatever. So I would always try and say, okay, can I reach out of myself, which is called empathy, by the way? Can I have enough empathy that I can put myself in someone else's shoes to see how they would get to that perspective? Doesn't mean I agree. Nowhere in the definition of empathy is agreement. Actually, not. Go look it up. Can I empathize with their position and how they would get there? And then can I see, in order to see where they're coming from? Again, I don't need to agree. It just means I pause my own beliefs and judgments for a moment without feeling threatened in order to see their perspective. It's just a perspective. That's all. And then be like, I mean, for teenagers, that can be a little bit wow. And you're like, okay, so what do you, and then I'm still being curious. What do you see as a solution here? What would you like to have happen? I'm not agreeing with any of it, but I'm being curious about it. Not critical of myself. It's not threatening me or my worth as a human being. I'm not wrong. They're not right. We're just in a conversation. Conflict actually can be a conversation, okay? And they would say, well, I want this, and I think this should have happened. Be like, okay, I'm not gonna likely to do all of that. I appreciate you sharing how you're feeling with me, because I want to acknowledge that they have brought hard feelings to this relationship, because if we don't bring hard feelings to the relationship and we don't feel like there's conflict sometimes, there's zero growth. And therefore we will never deepen our connection and get to know each other more. So I want to honor it and acknowledge that might have been hard for them to tell me. I love that you brought it to me. I'm not like going to do all of those things, but I get how you have arrived at that. What about if we do this? So now I am in negotiation. Now I'm throwing back, well, what about this option? Or I can do this, but not this. And, it's that, first of all, in conflict, you're not always going to agree. That's actually proven. Did you know that 66% of relationship issues are perpetual? And what you are learning in a healthy relationship is really healthy ways to navigate those perpetual issues, not how to solve them. That's statistic. That's from the Gottman Institute. They've been studying relationship for over 40 years. Trust me, it's not about tying this with a bow and a happy ending. I think conflict is more about deciding how you experience it as a child, either as terrifying, frightening, violent, painful, etc., or a massive void, so you have no idea what conflict is, so you're still avoiding it because this is just a giant unknown. That is where it all starts. Now, not only did our kids approach us when they were upset, but sometimes conflict shows up like this. Tell me if this sounds familiar. A conversation is going on, and all of a sudden somebody just goes angry or defensive. And you're like, you okay over there? Like, what happened? Because we don't always know. We don't always know, right? Sometimes we just get like rubbed the wrong way, and it was a word or a phrase, and it happened, and our body is having a physiological, it's usually 90 seconds, a physiological reaction to something, but we're like in our intellectual brain, which is much slower, by the way, we're like still catching up to, wait a second, I feel like I want to hit you, and I'm mad at you. And so sometimes it's that you just notice someone goes like, and you're like, we okay over there? And that would be, again, where the person having the experience kind of pauses and says, I just need to pause this conversation for a sec. Regulation, I'm taking a breath. Curiosity, I'm checking in with myself. What's going on? What am I feeling? What did I hear? Why did I just have, what's this reaction about? And I would say something like, yeah, you know what? I think it was that word or that phrase. I'm realizing to me that just rubs me the wrong way. I'm sure that that's not how you meant it. Generous assumption. That's a Brené Brown skill. Okay. Generous assumption. This person is not actually on this earth just to be next to me and literally piss me off every single moment. I know. As a parent, you're like, yeah, but my teenagers are. I know. I understand that. So generous assumption, that might not be how you meant it. Can I check that out? Checking your story, because your brain and your emotional brain, which is like, runs so fast, it responds within literally a nanosecond, 0.1 of a second, but your intellectual brain can't respond for about half a second. So who do you think is going to win? Right. Your emotional brain is going to win. So your emotional brain goes into reaction, but your intellectual brain, your executive function, is trying to respond. So this is about noticing the physiological reaction to the emotion, to the instant response from your emotional brain based on a story that you had or some experience when you were a kid or whatever. And then being like, wait a second, what's going on? Get curious, go inside. What is going on for me? Check out your story. So I have a story that you said this to me because you believe whatever. Did you know that 90% of conflict is perceived? That's right. Because our intellectual brains are so much slower than our emotional brains, and our emotional brains are doing relationship at a nanosecond. So we often run on assumption. Yeah, a lot of them. Your brain's having assumptions every single moment. You're assuming things about this picture behind me. You're assuming why I wore this t-shirt, about what these necklaces are about. You think my kids' names are on this. No, they're not. I love them, but no, they're not. You think I didn't wash my hair today? No, you're right, I didn't. You got assumptions about all these kind of things. About I must not have a job, that I'm doing IGTVs right now. Like, you've got assumptions about everything. And Great, that's what our brains do, except when those assumptions are unconscious, which most of the time they are, and you're allowing them to drive conflict without getting curious about them first. So check out your story. This is what I think I just heard you say. Am I correct? And they'd be like, yeah, I did say that. And then I'd say, well, can I, what did you mean by that? Because, oh boy, interpretation is like, well, it's about as big as the globe. That's how wide interpretation is. So check out what somebody meant. That's me. I'm having the reaction. It's my job to check their story. What did they mean by that? Before I just like mow them over and react to them because now they piss me off. These are all things we modeled for our kids. So now when I say something and my kids don't like it, they'll be like, well, wait, what did you mean by that? And then I'll explain, and sometimes I'll be like, oh, okay, whatever. And other times they'll be like, well, no, I'm not okay with that. I want to talk about that. I don't like it. Okay, great. Let's talk about it. So we've taught our kids to get curious internally. So I'll be in a conversation with my kids and I'll notice my kids all of a sudden kind of go dark for a second and they just stop talking. And so what I do is I stop talking. Because there's a reaction they're having that they are attempting to get their executive function online to be curious about what's going on. So I'll just stop talking. Just give it some space. And then now they're young adults. My kids are adults now. And this happened the other day. I just thought it was so cool to see it again in action now that they're adults. And I just paused because I saw his face kind of go like, and he was like, okay, so I stopped listening for a second there because I thought what you were saying was I wasn't good with my money. And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, that would have been a hard comment to hear. Empathize. I'm not agreeing. I'm empathizing. And then I said, oh, I understand. Okay. What I said was this, what I meant was this. Is that, he's like, so I clarified what I said. I clarified what I meant. And he was like, oh, okay. I get it. I misunderstood. So, we could have had a conflict, but instead we just had a misunderstanding. And then the conversation went on. But it was the fact that I noticed that he was doing exactly what his dad and I had modeled for him. Is check out your story, name your reaction, pause enough to respond, give yourself space to check out your story and question internally, question externally, be open and willing to resolve, be open and willing to hearing the other person's point of view, even if you don't agree, being like, oh, okay, maybe I misunderstood, or no, I'm not okay with that. Can we stop here and find a negotiated solution? Or do we need to put a pin in this? Is this a bigger issue that we might need to eat a bite at a time, right? How do you eat the elephant? A bite at a time. So when our kids would see us raise our voices, which was not very often, but we did raise our voices, not screaming, not yelling, but we did raise our voices in front of them sometimes. And then we would take a break and it was awkward and it was uncomfortable. Yep, sure was. Check. They would also see us then come back and we would do it in front of them. If anything ever got heated between the two of us, which was not very often, we would make sure that we went back in front of them and said, okay, I'm sorry I said this, that was not called for, or, okay, this is what I heard and I reacted instead of pausing and checking it out. So we would both take ownership of our part in what had just happened. And then we would begin to get curious in a conversation to create understanding and move to either a negotiated solution, or maybe we had created enough understanding that it was like, oh, okay, cool, and we just move on. But we would do that in front of the kids, because if you're just going to have conflict in front of your kids, but you're not going to show them what resolution looks like, no shoot, they're going to be terrified of conflict. Terrified. So I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I cover conflict in detail in the Empowered Parent Program, which is my online signature program with my 3-step proven framework, research-based and science-backed framework to creating healthy communication, conversation, connection, and relationship with your teenager. And yes, it also works with your partner, but don't tell anybody that. Parents who have taken my program have told me, oh yeah, all my relationships are better now. Oh, I didn't realize that this was how I was participating, and also giving you the tools and skills to model and teach your children how to have healthy conflict. Because if conflict arises and that's just the end, I think we're going to be pretty lonely. Like, how many relationships are you going to have left if conflict arises and that's it, it's over, because we have to run for the hills because we don't know how to be in healthy conflict. So if this is something you're interested in, just type conflict in the comments after, not right now because I'm about to post this. I will get you the link. I have a free masterclass. It covers that proven framework that I have that's in all of my programs to help you to begin to, let's say, do some damage control on conflict. Conflict doesn't need to be the end. Conflict is the beginning of change. And I understand that it can be really scary based on how it was modeled for you as a child. So I want you to know I see you, I'm here for you, and I'm going to walk you through it step by step, should you choose to join me. Thanks, everybody. Have an amazing, amazing weekend. In Canada, it's going to be Canada Day. In the US, it's Independence Day. And I hope everyone has a safe and amazing holiday weekend.